It began with a search on a child's iPad, typed in the quiet hours of a new year. The house was still, the only sound, the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the wooden floorboards. Outside, the first light of dawn was just beginning to break through the darkness, casting long shadows across the quiet suburban street. The words were chilling. How long before a body starts to smell? The search history revealed a series of increasingly disturbing queries, each one more horrifying than the last. It was as if the person behind the screen was meticulously planning something unspeakable. Hacksaw best tool to dismember. The cold, clinical nature of the searches suggested a mind that was disturbingly detached from the gravity of the actions being contemplated. The hacksaw, a tool meant for cutting through wood or metal, was now being considered for a far more sinister purpose. Prosecutors allege these were the calculated questions of a man who had just murdered his wife, Ana Walshe. Brian Walshe, a man who had once been a loving husband and father, now stood accused of a crime so heinous it defied comprehension. The courtroom was filled with a palpable sense of shock and disbelief as the details of the case were laid bare. The searches were a digital blueprint for a crime of unimaginable cruelty. Each query painted a picture of premeditation and cold-blooded calculation. It was as if the digital trail left behind was a roadmap to the dark recesses of a twisted mind. The home in Cohasset, Massachusetts, was supposed to be a place of celebration. Festive decorations adorned the exterior, a stark contrast to the horror that was allegedly unfolding within. Neighbors had no reason to suspect that anything was amiss. It was just another quiet, suburban street. It was New Year's Day, 2023. The clock had just struck midnight, marking the beginning of a new year filled with hope and promise for many. But for Ana Walshe, it was the end of everything. Friends had been over the night before, sharing a meal, ringing in the new year. Laughter and joy had filled the air as they toasted to new beginnings, completely unaware of the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface. Ana and her husband, Brian Walshe, had hosted the gathering. They had played the perfect hosts, ensuring that their guests were well-fed and entertained. To the outside world, they appeared to be a happy, loving couple. But behind the facade of suburban tranquility, something had gone terribly wrong. The house, now dark and silent, held secrets that were waiting to be uncovered. The peaceful exterior belied the horror that lay within. While the world made resolutions, a sinister plot was allegedly unfolding within those walls. As people around the globe celebrated new beginnings, the Walshe home was becoming the scene of an unimaginable crime. The tools for this alleged cleanup were mundane, the kind of items you might find in any household. But in this context, they took on a far more sinister significance. Buckets, mops, tarps, and tape. These everyday items were allegedly repurposed for a gruesome task, their ordinary nature making the crime all the more chilling. The contrast between the ordinary nature of the tools and the evil purpose they were allegedly used for is unsettling. It serves as a stark reminder that even the most mundane objects can be twisted into instruments of horror. While Ana's friends believed she was on a work trip, her life had already been stolen. They had no reason to suspect that anything was wrong, believing she was simply away for business. The truth, however, was far more tragic. The silence from the Cohasset home was the deafening silence of a crime waiting to be discovered. The quiet, unassuming house stood as a grim monument to the horror that had allegedly taken place within its walls. Who was Ana Walshe? To many, she was just a name in the news. But to those who truly knew her, Ana was so much more than a headline or a fleeting story. Before her name became synonymous with mystery, Ana was a vibrant, ambitious woman who radiated energy and optimism. She was the kind of person who could light up a room with her laughter and whose determination inspired those around her. Born in Belgrade, Serbia, Ana grew up surrounded by family and tradition. She was a devoted mother to 3 young boys, balancing the demands of parenthood with the pressures of a high-powered career as a real estate executive. Her journey from Serbia to the United States was marked by hard work, sacrifice, and a relentless pursuit of a better life for her family. Ana's life was a constant balancing act. She commuted regularly between Massachusetts and Washington, D.C., managing the challenges of a demanding job while never losing sight of her family's needs. Her ability to juggle these responsibilities was nothing short of remarkable. Friends described Ana as warm, intelligent, and endlessly full of life. She was the friend who remembered birthdays, who offered a listening ear, and who always made time for those she cared about, no matter how busy her schedule became. She was building a life many would envy, a beautiful family, a promising career, and a home filled with love and laughter. Ana's story was one of resilience, ambition, and hope for the future. That's why her sudden disappearance was so jarring. Ana was not someone who would simply vanish without a word. Her absence left a void that was immediately felt by everyone who knew her. Every day, Ana made time to call her mother and sister in Serbia, keeping her family close despite the distance. When those daily calls abruptly stopped, it was as if a lifeline had been cut, leaving her loved ones in shock and disbelief. As hours turned into days, unease grew among her family and friends. Their concern quickly turned to fear, and soon, an investigation was set in motion, one that would reveal just how much Ana Walshe meant to those who loved her, and how deeply her absence would be felt. The story, as first told, was simple. A loving wife and mother, Ana Walshe, had an urgent work call and left for Washington, D.C. on New Year's Day. Her husband, Brian Walshe, recounted this to the police, stating that she had to leave in a hurry. Brian Walshe claimed Ana had an urgent work call and left for D.C. on New Year's Day. He described how she received a sudden call that required her immediate presence in the capital. He said she got into a rideshare vehicle, headed for Logan Airport. The early morning departure seemed rushed, but not entirely out of the ordinary for someone with a demanding job. But the story began to fray immediately. Friends and neighbors started to question the details, and the police began their investigation with a sense of unease. There was no record of a rideshare or a flight. The airport had no record of Ana boarding any plane, and the rideshare companies had no logs of a pickup from their home. Her phone last pinged near her home, not at an airport. This crucial piece of evidence contradicted Brian's account and raised more questions than answers. The work emergency was a phantom. Her colleagues confirmed no such emergency existed. They were baffled by the claim and worried about Ana's sudden disappearance. It was her employer, not Brian, who reported her missing. This delay in reporting added to the growing suspicion around Brian's story. The delay was suspicious, and investigators began to scrutinize Brian. His behavior and inconsistencies in his story made him a person of interest. Police searched the wooded areas around the Walshe home. They combed through the dense forest, hoping to find any clue that could lead them to Ana. The community hoped it was a misunderstanding, but dread grew as the story collapsed. Candlelight vigils were held, and missing person flyers were posted everywhere. A darker narrative was beginning to take its place. The once simple story of a work emergency was unraveling into a complex and troubling mystery. With the official story full of holes, investigators focused on Brian Walshe. Surveillance footage showed him buying $450 worth of cleaning supplies on January 2nd. The purchases were a red flag, suggesting a cleanup of a murder scene. His movements were also suspicious, visiting dumpsters in multiple towns. This was not the behavior of a worried husband. The inconsistencies piled up, and Brian's narrative crumbled. He had a motive related to his legal troubles and a desire to inherit his wife's assets. Already on house arrest for art fraud, his unauthorized trips were brazen. The investigation shifted from a search for a missing person to a hunt for a killer. In the modern age, secrets are stored in the cloud. Brian Walshe's damning evidence came from his son's iPad. His search history provided a horrifying account of his alleged crime cover-up. The searches began hours after Ana was last seen alive. How long before a body starts to smell? How to clean blood from wooden floor? The timeline of searches aligned with the prosecution's theory. Hacksaw best tool to dismember. Can you be charged with murder without a body? The digital trail was a prosecutor's dream, contradicting Brian's claims of innocence. The iPad became a silent witness, recording every incriminating thought. Investigators searched dumpsters Brian visited after Ana's disappearance. At a trash transfer station, they sifted through trash bags. They found a hacksaw, towels, rags, and carpets soaked in blood. Personal items belonging to Ana were discovered. DNA testing confirmed the blood belonged to Ana and Brian. Despite overwhelming evidence, Ana's body was never found. Prosecutors argued the evidence was enough to prove Brian's guilt. Rumors swirled, including the story of the flower pot. A report claimed human remains were found in a flower pot on a balcony. The story captured public imagination, but was never confirmed by authorities. The flower pot rumor became a cautionary tale about misinformation. The confirmed evidence was damning enough without embellishment. Brian Walshe was arrested and charged with his wife's murder. He maintains his innocence, awaiting a closely watched trial. The trial will test if a murder conviction can be secured without a body. The defense targets the credibility of the police investigation. They hope to cast doubt on the integrity of the police work. Beyond the criminal case, a civil lawsuit seeks damages for the home's value loss. The tragedy's ripple effects extend beyond the family. The community is left grappling with the aftermath of the crime. As of August 2025, the case against Brian Walshe is ongoing. Jury selection for his trial is scheduled for October 2025. Prosecutors will present evidence to prove he murdered his wife. The defense will argue the evidence is circumstantial. They will emphasize the lack of a body as a key point. The trial represents a chance for justice for Ana's family. Her sons are growing up without their mother. The central question remains: what really happened to Ana Walshe?